eve of one of the most politically significant delegates conference this election cycle. But tonight the Jubilee Coalition is in a spin after it was forced to postpone that meeting yet again following sharp disagreements over the presidential nomination method. The technical teams of the member parties called off their talks after they failed to agree on whether to use consensus or secret ballot in picking the candidate. Edith Kimani opens Newsline this evening with the latest on this unfolding story.
At around 5:30 p.m. Monday evening, the United Democratic Forum UDF and the National Alliance TNA sent statements to newsrooms, both with a similar message. We have decided to postpone the National Delegates Conference that was meant to be held on Tuesday. This was a culmination of what has been a long day of confusion from two sides of one coalition. What is clear is that the Jubilee Coalition has not yet decided on a method to select its presidential flag bearer. This despite the principal partners, William Ruto, Uhuru Kenyatta and Musalia Mudavadi, together with their technical teams, being holed up in a meeting for almost 3 hours Monday morning. TNA is pushing for a delegates conference where representatives elect the presidential candidate through secret ballot. UDF, on the other hand, is insisting on a consensus as the way to nominate the flag bearer. The Mudavadi side say they are avoiding a divisive primary, although the team was apparently promised the presidency during their initial negotiations, which could explain the DPM's hard stance on a boardroom agreement. Members of Parliament who met in a Nairobi hotel earlier now say the solution could lie in the parliamentary group meetings.
You are aware that we have agreements signed and we have had technical teams working round the clock for some time. We have now called in the political the PGs from the different parties, and we had a team of about 15-16 members of Parliament doing the final negotiations. We can report that we are making exceptional progress and that by the end of this process we will have an answer for the country and a candidate for the Jubilee Coalition.
Even as the uncertainty wore through the day, preparations at the Moi Sports Centre Gymnasium continued uninterrupted. TNA delegates from across the country were also reportedly in the capital, all waiting to attend the Tuesday conference. The Jubilee Coalition has apparently also had to call 3 regional heads of state who were expected at the conference, as well as a group of observers from East Africa, to inform them about the cancellation of the event. Unconfirmed reports suggest that the conference has now been moved to Sunday, the 24th. Reporting for Newsline, I'm Edith Kimani.
The Jubilee Coalition has welcomed Charity Ngilu's proposal to be allowed to contest for the coalition's presidential ticket together with Uhuru Kenyatta and Musalia Mudavadi. Her request was granted during a Jubilee rally in her Kitui Central backyard. Musalia Mudavadi, whose fate in the Jubilee Alliance is unclear, snapped the rally. Aaron Ocheng was in Kitui.
Kitui Stadium in the county of Kitui this afternoon played host to Jubilee Coalition members and perhaps a political rally to brush aside any doubts that Water Minister Charity Ngilu is not welcome to the Uhuru Ruto-led coalition.
Hello, how are you?
But missing in action amid growing speculation of a deal not so good was Deputy Prime Minister Musalia Mudavadi, who was expected to be here, but no word of his whereabouts was conveyed, and neither was any of his UDF troops present. Ngilu's NAC was quick to state that their association with Jubilee was conditional.
Mheshimiwa Uhuru, wewe tunataka, kama ni wewe tutakuchagua ama ni Mheshimiwa Musalia, lazima mkubali mumenyane na Mama Ngilu.
And the Jubilee leaders were quick to guarantee that the presidential contest in the alliance will have the inclusion of Ngilu, making the contestants for the coalition ticket to 3.
NAC, which is a party in our coalition, and Charity Ngilu is welcome to the coalition, and she can contest any seat she wants.
The Kamba politics was also spared a thought, with those who spoke tearing into the Code coalition of Raila and Kalonzo Musyoka, accusing the vice president as having neglected the region in his many years of leadership.
Muliona nikiwa mtu anakuja kuleta fitina tu, ati pesa nimetumia vibaya. Kwa sababu ni mtu ambaye hata ukimuuliza kitu kimoja tu amefanya Ukambani miaka yote amekuwa kiongozi, hawezi akakuonyesha kitu.
Hawa wengine ni wale watu wa katikati, wanangoja watu wasimame hivi, wapite katikati. Lakini ngojeni niwaambie, safari hii hiyo njia ya katikati tumefunga.
Kama kuna watu ambao wametusiana zaidi kutuambia huyu ni bure, huyu ni namna hii, huyu hako hapa, hako pale, simunukumbuka mambo haya. Sasa huyo ndio amekuwa mtu mzuri sana katika taifa letu la Kenya. Siasa itatuonesha mambo mengi.
Uhuru stated that the presidential race is not a do or die contest, and if defeated, will concede defeat. It has been an outright show of might for Charity Kaluki Ngilu as she hosted Jubilee Alliance members here in Kitui's Central constituency. Her message to her perennial political rival Kalonzo Musyoka is that the Kamba vote is still up for grabs. Aaron Ocheng, KTN at the Kitui Stadium.
The haggling in the Jubilee Coalition is only the latest attempt to find a shortcut to the much-acclaimed concept known as democracy. Many parties are now resorting to what analysts are calling negotiated democracy to forestall costly fallout. But is real democracy being lost in the process? KTN's Rita Tinina now takes a closer look at the emerging trend.
With political parties having beaten the deadline for formation of coalitions, the next headache is now at hand: party primaries. Nominations have in the past proved to be a landmine for some parties and have at times led to fallouts.
Even the ability of any single political party to hold free and fair elections. They have no machinery, they have no resources, security isn't there.
Now it appears parties are seeking to stem divisions by reaching agreements. Is it negotiated democracy or a subversion of real democracy?
We are far from realizing a democratic process where people are going to be chosen on the basis of the ideas they bring to the table. What we have is who is standing. Where is he from? Is he my tribe?
In Siaya County, voters were preparing for a titanic battle pitting Prime Minister Raila Odinga's big brother Oburu Odinga and Raila's right-hand man James Orengo. Orengo and Oburu were both eyeing the Siaya Senate seat. But now the two have come to a negotiated settlement. Oburu stepped down for Orengo and will now be gunning for the Siaya governor's position.
The fallout would have been worse for the party. And so it was necessary that some kind of negotiations be done to enable James Orengo not to take on Oburu Odinga.
In Migori County, an agreement by ODM has seen the party reserve the senator's ticket for the Kuria region, in effect giving the party's ticket to Kuria MP Wilfred Machage. Under the agreement, the predominantly Luo side of the county will take the governor's position. Analysts say the so-called negotiated democracy may take root in the new county dispensation.
Democracy per se, where the first past the post takes it, is problematic, because then when you're addressing issues of minority, you will then only have to do that through a nomination process that takes care of that. Unless you do that, then they're never ever going to have a representation at that level. So we must admit that this is a scenario we'll be seeing in Kenya, especially around the various counties where there are multi-ethnic.
In the past few days, confusion has rocked the Jubilee Coalition over the mode of nominating its presidential flag bearer, with TNA and URP advocating for a secret ballot and UDF pushing for consensus.
I think Musalia is a very good epitome of what our politics is about. The democracy is only democracy if it works in your favor. So in ODM, he said there was no democracy. He demanded nominations to be done at the county level. And when that was not given, the county issue was not given, the issue of automatic party leader was deleted, he still left. On the contrary, his position has been, let's sit in the boardroom, let's decide. Now, that is a bit of an oxymoron, that you can't preach one thing and when it suits you, you take another.
With the coalitions now in place, the search for nomination tickets promises to be an acrimonious exercise. And with the realities introduced by the county system of government, will the so-called negotiated democracy stand in the way of true democracy? Rita Tinina, KTN, Nairobi.
For many women politicians, even the so-called negotiated democracy doesn't seem to work. The country still lags behind in women representation in key elective institutions. Many activists now fear that a recent ruling by the Supreme Court on the 1/3 gender rule may have deferred the dreams of many women aspirants. Or has it? KTN's Catherine Omando has the story.
It came as a surprise to many campaigners, but the recent Supreme Court ruling to postpone the implementation of the gender parity rule has been interpreted as a temporary remedy and not a solution to solving the constitutional crisis surrounding the 2/3 gender rule.
And even more disappointing was that one of the judges who postponed the rights of women to participate was herself a product of affirmative action.
The purpose of the clause was to compel leaders to provide a level playing field for both men and women in the socio-political arena. After all, statistics suggest that women make up more than 50% of the population and only 10% of parliament.
Working towards gender equality is not, and I repeat, not a favor to women. It's a favor to us as a country.
There are those who would argue otherwise and would rather women battle it out for their place in the political and social arena on merit, just as their male counterparts. Women who did just that are the likes of Charity Ngilu and Martha Karua, who have earned their places in the current political system without affirmative action. However, these women seem to never play key roles in political decisions. Take, for example, the coalitions and election pacts currently dominating the headlines. No woman has stood in the front line. Most take a back seat. Save for Charity Ngilu, who remains in the headlines but has little say in key decisions.
What we encourage women is to say that you don't play the game in the same way that the men are playing it. You have other assets, you have other values, you have other virtues.
Campaigners say women seeking leadership positions are held to much higher standards than their male counterparts, and their behavior can be termed as hurting gender equality. Take, for example, former Deputy Chief Justice Nancy Baraza, who was dismissed after she had an altercation with a security guard, and the politically aloof Kingwa Kimenchu, who is planning to vie for presidency in the March 4th election.
If a referendum to remove Article 81B from the Constitution is out of the question, then the government may have to invest more time and money in civic education and women empowerment so that come 2015, the gender parity issue will no longer be an issue. Catherine Omwando, KTN in Nairobi.
Well, let's find reason for these stories. As we run them, as we prepare, there must be a reason that we want to bring these stories to you, which is why I have Joe back in studio. What are we seeing happening today? Why do we line up the stories that we've lined them up? What is the significance we're giving to Kenyans today?
Well, I think different things. I mean, a lot of people will say this is the silly season in our politics. I mean, where a lot of things that sometimes we can't even explain begin to happen, where politicians move back and forth from different parties. But I think what is happening in the story that we ran the first time, and it's great that you have Mheshimiwa Kitui here and a lot of other analysts to look at what's going on in the Jubilee Coalition, and I like what you said about there being no jubilation.
There's no jubilation,
because,
not yet.
I mean, initially they had said there would be a nomination process going on at Kasarani. It was slotted for Tuesday, moved to Monday, moved to Tuesday again, and now completely shelved. We don't know when. Indications maybe on Saturday, but the truth is...
are we at risk of running stories in a way that we don't give the clarity over what is being missed by the voter? Potentially the danger the voter is facing?
I wish there was clarity even within the parties, but there isn't. I mean, we try our best, but there isn't that much clarity. Who knows right now what's going to happen to that nomination exercise? We don't know. So we only tell our viewers what we find out there, that these people are negotiating. They haven't agreed. They said they would not have it on Tuesday. What more can you say?
Let's turn to faces of wisdom. People have been around. Dr. Minister Kitui is here, Rosemary is here. And Dr. Kitui, what do you make of the stories, even just today, the jubilation that is not going to be a jubilation?
I don't think that the situation is as interpreted. First of all, there's too much hype about Musalia failing to be in Kitui. I know the objective facts, that the arrangement for a Kitui trip was made late yesterday evening. At that moment, Honorable Musalia Mudavadi had agreed with members of his political council that we're going to have consultations about the process going on, what is the best effective way that we can continue to hold in view of views by other parties to the coalition on the process of picking a candidate for president. Unfortunately, there was early consultation between the three principals, which went in rather late, so that the departure of Uhuru and Ruto to Kitui occurred in the afternoon. At the same time now, Musalia was late in meeting with his political council. By the time he finished with his political council, it was too late to make it to Kitui, partly because Uhuru was coming back to meet his parliamentary group at 4:30. So there was a timing problem, which was just because of a glitch of work from yesterday. There's nothing great about it. I mean, 2 days ago on Friday, there was a joint rally in Narok, in Molot, North Narok. And what happened? Because Uhuru Kenyatta was going to give away his niece at a wedding at the Holy Family Basilica, and they were late getting to start, he came up to the airport and didn't travel.
The logistics are only clear to a few.
No. I'm helping you to understand.
Yes.
There was no hullabaloo about Uhuru failing to be in Narok.
Yes.
Those of us who went explained why he was not there.
Right.
Today, those who went explained why Musalia was not in Kitui.
There was a statement, Mheshimiwa, last night saying that there would be a rally in Kitui and that 3 people would attend: Musalia Mudavadi, Uhuru Kenyatta.
That statement was even given in the run-up to the Narok meeting.
And William Ruto. And this morning, this afternoon, there was a statement again issued from Musalia Mudavadi's office saying that actually the Deputy Prime Minister was left in Nairobi because he had been given some roles by the Jubilee Coalition. Honestly, that kind of confusion doesn't help much.
It doesn't help very much to have a glitch at the start of a process of structured, inclusive planning for a long-term program of rallies. But I can assure you, the 3 principals are going to be appearing at most rallies together.
Rose, you're part of this discussion for the big reason that there's a lot of discussion about inclusion of the women. There's a lot of discussion about maybe some of them losing steam or even losing relevance. What would you say about the situation?
First of all, I think the context of the recent ruling puts things a little bit far back than we would have thought. We should be discussing better opportunities, a much clearer way for women. At the moment, after that ruling, I feel that the reaction of the women is justified. They're shocked, they're disillusioned, but they have been very fast in designing or agreeing on how to move forward. Because after that ruling, of course, the politics will continue by the look of it. A ruling of the Supreme Court is an important decision.
I'm more worried about the inclusion. Terry, I'm more worried about where is Charity Ngilu in this kind of confusion, as we say. Where is the voice of the women? Have you locked them out?
No, I think there's an unfortunate thing which forced the High Court to have to make a decision that is painful in the struggle for the liberation and empowerment of women in Kenya. This is this way. The original provision of 1/3 elective positions to women was done when the original draft of the Constitution provided for proportional representation. In proportional representation, you oblige all parties that at least 1 out of every 3 candidates is of the other gender. That way, every one of the first 3 will be a woman. Now, when the Constitution was changed to abandon proportional representation, consequential amendments were not then done to provide for another realistic method of ensuring 1/3 representation. So that is the crisis. I will support totally at least 1/3 of members of parliament or any elected position to be women. But if you have abandoned the proportional representation system, you cannot be able. You make parties feel women in constituencies they know they don't.
That's what I'm trying to say, Joe. We're always trying to tie in where's the voice of the women, and now as we're talking about alliances and coalitions, is Rose in representation locked out when it's subjective that we show Charity Ngilu as having sort of missed the bus?
So some people actually say they are left with shells of parties. Look at NARC. Some people will say even NARC Kenya, there isn't much left there, but you know, they're left holding them. That's very interesting.
Are you locked out, Rose?
Women are not locked out. The issue is the numbers have always been very small. Look at any party that is in the coalition. If you look for senior leadership from women in those parties, the numbers are very small. If you look at any group coming out of those negotiation meetings, maybe one or two will have one woman among 8 or 10 men. So that's something.
Just a problem.
No, because it is to do with the hierarchy and the decision makers. And if you compose your own team for the negotiations, you'd have to be very progressive to remember that you need to include the women. I have seen my colleagues go to meetings and then they come and tell me, oh, we went to lunch with so and so. And I'm a very senior party official in my own party.
Right.
They do it almost automatically. You see, all these groups walking out of all these hotels, the women you can count on one hand at all.
You know, our political culture has a problem on to fix across the political divide. We have extremely brilliant women leaders. I have, over the past 5 years, made a lot of very, very promising young professional women who could make fantastic political leaders without a lot of the garbage that we have carried historically. Unfortunately, there is an undefined ceiling in our psyche as a society beyond which we are not helping women break through. So they get to tokenism, very condescending appreciation of what they can do. But as a society, we cannot just say these are women's problems. As a society, we have to address how can we grow that crop of promising women leaders to take the rightful position in politics.
Joe, have we given enough voice to women representation? Because we're trying to tie in these stories and say, as people are forming coalitions and people coming together, we're trying to make sure the woman's voice is not lost. Are we doing enough?
Well, maybe not. I mean, there are many constituencies right now, for instance, where women candidates, aspirants are being told, well, you know, you already have your special seats, you know, the women's representative seat, and they're being told, why are you coming here to fight with us? And yet you have been given your own seats where there are no men contesting. So there are still all these, I think, hurdles that they have in their ways, but not to say that there aren't women out there who are fighting it out with the men and making it. I think that to say that there aren't women out there who have already broken that barrier probably will be understating what I think is a great thing happening in certain parts of the country.
Rose, I need to ask you this, and yes, and as Rose responds, I want to run my first editorial cartoon, which is the first one, but Rose, go ahead.
First of all, the women, because we've looked at these issues for a long time, the women who we would like to see in politics are young professional women, like you're saying. If you go to them, they're busy making careers, raising families. The average age for women who have run for politics before has always been of about 50. We did this research because that's when they feel they have dealt with the family, that's when they feel they are freer. Now, so all these other women who are capable of running for office need encouragement, they need empowerment, they need information to come across. So normally the numbers that come across are not enough. So that's one issue. The second issue is we have agreed to a gender rule. But that gender rule, it's not something that we believe in as a society. That's the conclusion one comes to. Because we don't want to spend all our life persuading and begging. When we started the pro-democracy movement, it was to create a feeling among all Kenyans that they are citizens. That was a really major breakthrough with this constitution. This constitution achieves two things, mainly, devolution and gender.
Right.
Immediately, there was a whole task force to work on the laws and the system of how to implement devolution. The gender issue has been left unattended, but you will find there is a formula applicable at the county level of how women will be searched for after elections.
Thank you very much, Rose. Dr. Before I let you go, I want you to have a look at that. I want to play this editorial cartoon, and what do you see? Just face off from there. If I give you this picture, and the viewers are watching it at home.
Oh, well,
I want
yeah.
to show that. What does that tell you? Can I have it? Yeah, please put it up. I want my viewers to see this. Please put it up, so we don't just share it alone in studio. Yes. Dr. What do you see?
This caricatures what has been said by a section of the media or notions of challenges of the Jubilee Alliance, the notion of a hidden hand. And, I've seen this in text before, yes. What about it?
But you haven't told me anything. I mean, I need you to tell me, because you gave me a lot of information about the lags that were there and the gaps that were there.
All right.
Is there, what gives for this notion?
Okay, the impression is that this is a forced arrangement. And it is my understanding that the three principals in the Jubilee Alliance have been talking for a long time together about a joint platform. At one time it fizzled off, and then it revived again. And in that process, I've never seen any hidden hand that attempted to manipulate the direction they're going. I strongly believe that the challenges of this transitional period requires inclusive, diverse, and sensitive coalition building. Unfortunately, we live in a society where ideology, policy content does not have a lot of traction with the electorate. Okay. And therefore the sense of inclusion, the sense of belonging, the sense of our own is also in, remains a very, very popular, appealing phenomenon in the mobilization of politics. And you cannot run away from that reality.
Thank you, Natai. Thank you, Rose. We're just moving into other stories of the day as we talk about the happenings. The Commission on Administrative Justice wants Makadara Member of Parliament Gideon Mbuvi, alias Mike Sonko, and his Embakasi counterpart Ferdinand Waititu barred from vying for any public office. The commission, chaired by Otiende Amolo, termed the two unfit to hold office owing to their conduct, and has written to the IEBC to bar the two from contesting the March polls. And alongside the two are 12 former public servants convicted of abuse of office, as well as the 22 commissioners of the obsolete Electoral Commission of Kenya.
The category of public officers who are unresponsive or have engaged in misbehavior, unresponsive or who have engaged in misbehavior. And in this respect, there are two names that we have come up with. First is the name of the Honorable Ferdinand Waititu. The other person is the MP for Makadara. This is the Honorable Mbuvi, Gideon Mbuvi.
I'm very, very sure that the chairman, Mr. Otiende Amolo, has a vested interest in the Nairobi coming elections. Being a brother to one of the candidates who is contesting the senatorship together with Mr. Mike Sonko, and that is against Article 249, 2, which states very clearly that all the commission holders should be independent and they should not have any vested interest in any issue that they purport to be investigating and to issue any position.
Otiende Amolo hawezi kunizuia mimi kutetea haki za Wakenya. Otiende Amolo ni ndugu yake Elizabeth Ongoro anayewania kiti cha useneta.
Several people have been injured in multiple explosions in Eastleigh this evening. The blast occurred in a bar situated on Moratina Road within the densely populated estate. Witnesses say they heard 3 successive blasts in the bar, prompting a stampede in the building where the bar is situated. It is unclear whether the explosives were planted at the social place or hurled in. Police have cordoned off the area, keeping the public off the scene of the blast. We'll keep you updated on this story. Latest figures from the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission indicate over 12.7 million Kenyans have so far been registered, with just a day left to the end of the exercise. In some constituencies, IEBC has surpassed its target, registering over 100% of the eligible voters. Nairobi County leads with 106% registered voters, followed by Kiambu at 102%, Nyeri 99%. Lamu and Kirinyaga counties are at 95% each. Performing poorly are West Pokot County with only 40% of eligible voters registered, followed by Garissa at 35%, Wajir, Turkana and Mandera have registered 34, 30 and 23% of the county's eligible voters. The IEBC figures, which capture data after the 16th of December, are however over 5 million short of the 18 million IEBC target. The ongoing voter registration exercise comes to an end tomorrow. Well, it is only 24 hours before the close of the countrywide voter registration exercise. According to the latest figures by the IEBC, Mandera and Turkana have recorded the lowest number of voters registered. Let's join our senior reporter Asha Ngilu in Lodwar Town, Turkana County, for a live update on the exercise there. Talk to us, Asha.
A very good evening to you, Louis, and to our viewers back at home. We've been in Turkana County for the past 5 days, and tonight the locals here have christened me Akiru, so that's my name. I'm standing right outside the Museum of Lodwar, where the first president of the Republic, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, was held in captivity for 3 good years by the colonial masters. And so it's such museums that make the people of Turkana very keen on whom they will elect to represent them in the county government, so that they can manage such museums very well. So today we wanted to show you a new side of Turkana, and we went to the rich Lake Turkana, very well known for fishing activities. Visited some of the residents that live in the 4 islands in this lake. And so I filed this story earlier on today and brought you all the details about voter registration on Lake Turkana. It's mid-Monday morning at the shores of Lake Turkana, about 50 kilometers away from Lodwar town. IEBC officials have allowed us to join them into the 4 islands that sit on this rich lake, surrounded by the almost desert terrain that makes up most of central Turkana. It takes about 30 minutes on a speedboat to get to the closest island, Longech, in Kalokol division. Central Turkana was assigned 51 BVR kits to be shared amongst slightly more than 100 registration centers. Today, Longech Island will have 1 kit for the entire day.
The distance between one registration center and the other one is such a long distance that covering it takes time.
Already 1,185 villagers have been registered so far, and these 2 last days for the IEBC officials here will be crucial to ensure that no one is locked out of the polls.
Nimejiregister kwa sababu nichague kiongozi ambaye inafaa.
Kuna wengine wanaona wameogopa kulingana ile vita ambayo ilitokea wakati ile. Sasa wengine wanaona hakuna haja. Sasa unajua sasa hii tunajaribu kuangalia wao pia waende tu. Sasa zingine vita hawezi toka tena kama wakati ile.
The main challenge in such an island, however, is security, with IEBC officials having to factor in the neighboring hostile communities that come from Ethiopia and Sudan that could strike such a village at any time.
Cases kama hizo sio mingi sana, but in the mara ya kwanza tulipata issue na watu kuogopa kwa sababu kulikuwa na issue ya disarmament.
The target was to register at least 25,000 voters in Central Turkana constituency, and the Electoral Commission says that compared to 2007, the numbers in this constituency will surpass their target. Well, Louis, of course, you've seen all the details that we had organized for you, what we observed in Lake Turkana. And in the past few days, rather the last 2 weeks, we visited residents in Kibera slums. We've gone to coffee pickers in Kiambu. We've gone to Machakos, where we've met the women at the marketplace. We've gone to Nakuru County. We've gone to Uasin Gishu, and now we're in Turkana County. Only 1 more day remains for the voter registration exercise. And from the KTN crew here in Turkana County, we will not leave any stone unturned. We'll bring you all the details until IEBC closes all its registration centers. So from us here, from myself, Akiru, as I'm now well known here in Turkana County, and the KTN crew, we bid you good night and thank you for joining us once more. Louis.
9 people have been arrested in connection with last night's blast in Eastleigh, in which people were seriously injured. The suspects are currently being interrogated by the anti-terrorism police in various locations in Nairobi. The blast occurred in a bar situated on Moratina Road within the densely populated Eastleigh estate. Police suspect the explosives were hurled at the bar from a nearby building, which is a suspected hideout for terrorists. Security agents managed to discover an elaborate communication system in one of the houses close to the scene of the blast. Right, back in studio, I have invited more guests to join us. This is in my quest to just get further understanding of what is happening, especially that now everything is apolitical. And I'm happy to have you, Professor Kindiki Kithure, and of course, Wangui Mbatia. Thank you for joining us. I know, Wangui, you heard us talk about representation of the women. I don't want to go into the long details of the legality of it, but how does this make you feel as somebody who's been actively finding voice for the women?
It simply changes the approach. I think now, more than anything, we realize we have won the legal battles, but not the political ones. I don't think the battle is lost yet. We still haven't gone through nominations at political parties. And this is a political season, and it is a game of numbers. I think we still have room to work within the politics of the coalitions. If you want the women's vote, then you will be friendly to the women candidates, so that if we see our face in your coalition, then perhaps you might win the other things. I think for a very long time, the fight for women's rights has been reduced to the boardroom and the legal end of it. I think it is important to start exerting the political influence that women have. And if you take our experience, for instance, if you look at the turnout of the Rift Valley political returns, if you look at 2007, they had 10 women that are in parliament through the direct vote. So given time, space and chance, we will be able to occupy the offices, perhaps even more than a third, provided that the nominations are fair.
That's just the thing for me. Like you said, given time by the law taking course, given time by waiting for this to come to pass, or given how do you get into this space? I suppose, again, back to the politics of it, when we started talking about using terms like crisis, there's going to be a constitutional crisis if you don't get a third. It then creates a situation where institutions start averting crisis, as it were. And then you have decisions made by the Supreme Court, as we got, that there is going to be a crisis and we are 3 months to the election. And how do we avert it? That would be one thing. And you have noticed that Parliament has conveniently refused to amend the Constitution to provide for the nomination process within the Constitution. So then that left that way. Then the question would be, why engage in an electoral process if then immediately after the returns are brought in, if we don't have a third of the women, then we would collapse it. But the Constitution also provides for a 5-year transition period. And I think also as a community, as hard as it is for us to agree and to deal with it, it is important for us as the Kenyan community to really just look at the situation and understand maybe that 5 years is not even enough for us to transition, but we should now start respecting the institutions because we are the ones who created them. As hard as it is to swallow the decision from the Supreme Court, it is our last court this is the last word. Litigation must have an end. And they have only said a simple thing, that we can start by 2015. Now, the other challenge is, I think women, it is time now to start also dealing with the politics of getting elected. Look for position within your political party, vie for position. There are a whole lot of positions, from the governor's position, the presidential position. Vie for those seats. Get involved. Well, get involved and get involved now. Professor Kindiki, this gentleman here has been working with a lot of institutions, and lucky for me, legal mind too. Feel free to challenge him as a gentleman in that area on what speed is being made. But again, Prof, we're looking for clarity on the issue of alliances being formed. Tell me about these hidden hands. Do you see any?
I have not seen any. But
are there reluctant partners working in these things?
There could be, but Louis, for me, it doesn't matter, because I think there are a number of things in which, as Kenyans, we are losing the debate on how we conduct our politics once more.
Right.
And that, for me, is my worry. First of all, I want to say that I am very proud as a Kenyan that we have put in place the hardware for conducting our politics and running our country. The hardware is in the new constitution and the superstructure upon which the constitution is built. I don't think in this country, again, it will be possible for politicians and leaders to take people for granted. So for me, when we have a new constitution and its mechanism, I'm less worried about who joins who. So what we are lacking, though, and that's where my worry is the software of running the hardware that we have.
Tell me that in English.
Number one. In English, yes.
Yes, because if you tell me the software and the hardware,
number one,
you're going to lose a lot of the people who are trying to follow the clarity you want to
give. Number
one,
to coalitions are a reality, and I think in a country like Kenya, you need that as a stabilizing factor. In fact, we have even more mature democracies like Switzerland, who practice even beyond what we have now. They rotate their presidency. So in terms of us being sensitive to ethnicity and equity, I don't think that's a bad idea. But what is worrying me is that people have not changed their language. The reasons they are giving why, for example, a person from a certain ethnicity cannot run for office is still crude. That's why I'm saying we have the software in place, but the hardware in place, but the software is not there. Secondly, politics is a rough business all over the world, not just in Kenya. It's a rough business in America. It's a rough business in Europe, in Africa. It's contest, people. It's competition. But the problems we have in this country, the software that we are still lacking, even if we have the hardware, is number one, we've been engaging in the game for too long. And that's why people are a bit fatigued and that kind of thing. I wish these intrigues just started last month. Then we have 3 months of intrigues, as you have in America, and after that we all work together to build our nation. Lastly, what is worrying me is that even as we discuss coalitions and who is joining who, and who is whose project, and who has a hidden hand, which for me, it doesn't matter. Whoever wants to hide their hand or show it is neither here nor there. They're just trying their luck. We wish them well. The voters may reject him. My worry is that none of the two coalitions is coming out clearly, first of all, to promote an inter-coalition discourse beyond 4th of March, and that is worrying based on what happened last time. And secondly, none of the coalitions is even addressing what shamed our country even last time.
Right.
So for me, it's the small things, and we can fix them. I still have hope we can fix them.
Now, even as I speak to you separately, I don't want to sort of have you engage in a debate, but I just want, now that you're here as people who've been around this area, when you hear what Wangui says about it's time to take some hard decisions, have they found their space? Is it the fault of the kind of coalitions we're seeing now that it will continue being a waiting time for the women?
First, I must say, Louis, I am in total agreement with what my sister said here, largely, because I think the issue of inclusion is the one factor that will actually make or break this nation. And that inclusion is generational, it is gender, it is class, it is ethnic, name it. Actually, the theme of inclusion for me is very critical. So I think women, and I want to agree with her, women have got it, but only half of the goodies have been delivered. Again, I'll use my vocabulary or my terminology, the hardware. The Constitution is there. It might not be perfect, but it has laid the foundation for inclusion of women, even post-2015. And I like what she has said. They might have lost a war in the Supreme Court, a battle, but I think the war is not lost. So, because there is life even after 2015. If we can achieve whatever we wanted to achieve now, after 3 years, it's still okay. So my only worry again is the software of processing inclusion of women. And I think of all the other classes that have felt marginalized, women have got the most in the current situation, because You know, minority communities are not even featuring anywhere in this discourse, even in the coalition building. I'm very worried. We're just talking about 5 communities who control 76% of Kenya's population. The rest, nearly 39 communities, constitute only 20%. So in terms of inclusion, I think our women have got quite something, and I'm not saying they have got everything. We'll just have to keep on fighting until we reach there.
Well, I think I want to vary just a little bit from what Professor said. The software is there. What it requires is activation. If you take, for instance, the Political Parties Act, we all engaged in a process of, one, ensuring that every political party is well represented nationally, and therefore it reflects the face of the country, because that's required in the Constitution. We've said that political parties can no longer be regional or ethnic in terms of their composition. We also required of every political party that it must have a third representation of either gender, so that even as we speak and talk about the coalition building, one would have expected that since these are not coalitions of individuals, if you all agree that the submitted agreements were really agreements between and amongst parties, then one would have expected somehow that some of those women that are now incorporated into the infrastructure of political parties would have been part and parcel of the vision we were seeing outside there. Unfortunately, it still hasn't translated, and I think that is perhaps for me my challenge to the Registrar of Political Parties on one aspect. What was the whole point of the exercise of asking political parties to comply to the 1/3 gender rule if indeed it is not going to be followed? That's the first thing. The second thing is we required of political parties that state officers ought not hold office. And now I am seeing left and right statements made by state officers, but ceremoniously you will see the chairman of a political party sign a document. Yes. That for me is also a source of concern. We also went through a process where there was a deadline for nomination rules, and we saw parties scramble to submit nomination rules. And then we hear now that there is a process of negotiating quote-unquote consensus. Fine, I have no difficulty with consensus. It's a very palatable word when it comes to a country like Kenya that has had the kind of difficulty with elections.
What would you add to the institution that Kindiki is talking about? What is missing in the formation of the institution he's talking about?
The activation for the people of goodwill to show up and hold themselves to the principles that we all espouse as a nation. I'll give an example. Take, for instance, the case of choosing presidential candidates. We all expected that there is going to be a point at which we subject presidential candidates to the universal suffrage of Kenya. But prior to that, we all expected that political parties would hold primaries. And what we were hoping, because the laws do provide for it, is that now at that stage, the Registrar of Political Parties and the IEBC would come in force to ensure that the process is democratic. Granted, we haven't the time to do it right, because it's quite short, but we should have seen at least the beginning of an exercise so that in future we know what to remedy and what not to. This kind of negotiations where somebody says, look, I don't want to have delegates come to do their elections, I would prefer that we have a consensus amongst us. Then is another issue. These people that are holding these meetings of consensus, really, one, clearly do not hold any portfolio in their political parties. Two, are a minority because if they have a vote, they are a voter just like any other party members. Yes. And how do they, where do they derive their authority to negotiate a consensus on behalf of party members to the exclusion of party members? We have
a conversation that needs to continue, definitely. A closing comment from you, Professor?
Yes, my closing comment, I think as we make coalitions, as people stretch their hidden or visible hands, or whatever other things they want to stretch, let us know and remember that this nation is so critical to us, and unless we put the nation first, we will lose it again for a second time. My appeal to Kenyans is to register those who have not registered. It is both a duty to register and it's also a privilege. There are many people who are displaced from their homelands and they cannot do what we are fortunate to be doing. Okay. Finally, we have become a grumbling nation. For me, it doesn't matter who leads this nation, but they must love Kenya. And I think we must concretize the gains we have, formidable country that we are, and of course start improving on that so that we can be the great country that we aspire to be one day.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Ngui. And those are the comments from those who are following incidents happening here. Well, in other news of the day and the business front, the case in which the Consumer Federation of Kenya wants the digital migration shelved until 2015 will be heard Thursday, December 20th. The court has also issued a warning to PS Bitange Ndemo for commenting on the issue on his Twitter account.
According to High Court Judge Justice Isaac Lenaola, the government has until Thursday this week to file replying affidavits. In the case, COFEC has sought orders from the court to stop the government from switching off analog broadcasting in Nairobi on December 31st. The Federation argues that the switch off will leave many Nairobi residents without a medium of communication, thereby missing out on civic education ahead of next year's general election. The consumer body also holds that there are no reasons for the migration to be rushed while the regulator has not carried out enough public awareness on the same. The High Court in its Monday directive warned the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Information and Communication, Bitange Ndemo, against his continuous utterances aimed at COFEC. The PS is said to have posted a tweet directed at the consumer rights group accusing it of protecting the elitist broadcasting platforms. Ndemo is said to have also blamed COFEC for advancing monopolistic practices through the media, noting that the group was turning the country against the regional economic bloc after EAC member states settled for the December 31st deadline for the digital migration. Philip Keitan for KTN Business Today.
The shareholding structures at the Family Bank set to change with the entry of 3 new strategic shareholders: the Kenya Tea Development Authority, KTDA, and the local authority's pension trust, Lab Trust, will join Daiko Plantations Limited as the new anchor shareholders at Family Bank. The strategic investors that intended to drive the bank's growth in readiness for listing in 2010. A consortium of investors bought into the bank, helping it raise 1.5 billion shillings to drive growth. KTDA will take up 36 million shares, while Laptrust will be allotted 10 million shares as Daiko Plantations takes 7 million shares. Family Bank has in the last 2 months made a raft of changes in its board composition, as well as carrying out a rights issue seeking to raise 1.2 billion shillings. Farmers in grain-rich North Rift can now access a commodity warehouse that opened in the region over the weekend. The warehouse under the East Africa Grain Council is targeted for farmers in Kitale, Nandi and parts of Western Province. The warehouse, operated by Mama Miller, has a 4,500 metric tons capacity and will cost farmers 70 shillings per 90 kilogram bag every 3 months for storage. The grains stored can also be used by farmers as collateral to access credit facilities from local banks. The operators say North Rift farmers have previously incurred heavy losses due to poor storage facilities that has led to selling off harvest cheaply to minimize losses. Pay TV in Kenya has been around since the mid-90s with the entry of South African-based firm MultiChoice. The entry of more players into the market has given Kenyans exposure to global content that had previously been hard to come by. But in the past, MultiChoice's stronghold on the market has been questioned, with other operators wanting its dominance checked. Speaking in Nairobi earlier today, MultiChoice Africa Executive Chairman Nolo Letele, however, countered the argument, saying the company has invested immensely into the sector. MultiChoice, through its sister companies DSTV and SuperSport, has exclusive rights to a number of premier movies and sports content that makes it the envy of many.
Pay TV is not for the faint-hearted. You have to be prepared to actually walk the walk, walk the route. You have to be prepared to put money into it and to take losses for a long period of time before it becomes profitable. That's just the reality of it. There's no quick win or quick fix. So exactly as Stephen has said, just now, we are able to to be unique because the rights have to be exclusive. If they're not exclusive, they become what I call public domain.
A quick look at financial and money markets now. After the day's business, let's have another page of Mshamba's diary.
Mimi nimeshtuka sana. Kama makoalisho zinakaa hivyo.
Yes.
Afadhali sasa hata makanisa sikuwe na makoalisho.
Kanisa sikuwe na coalition. Mimi wacha nikwambie, hata mashule zile zinafanya vibaya. Si coalition tuketa sikuwe sote pamoja.
Hizi shule za chini chini.
Hizi utaona zitafanya vizuri.
Kama Shamshingili high school. Sasa
yani hata hii vitu ya coalition iingie mpaka zile shule zinafanya vibaya kabisa.
Hizo masuri zinakuwa rasi.
Hiyo sichini kuminja sikutane sote sikuwe zifanye coalition. Sitapita starehe.
Shamshingili.
Yes.
Hivyo ndio mimi nasemaga.
Duku. Hey. Habari yako bwana?
Mzuri sana.
Huko kusima?
Niko msima.
Very nice, very nice. Safari ya leo?
Mzuri sana. Karibu sana kwa kituo cha usajili.
Hapa ndio IPC.
Hapa ndio kituo cha
Isi IPC ni IPC.
Okay. Hebu niulize. Nikipik mukiregister hapa. Canada pia na kwa register.
Hapana.
Oh.
Si register hapa tu. Details zako zinaonekana hapa.
Oh.
Kwenye hii constituency starehe.
Okay. Na hii kompyuta inapatanga virus. Ituseme upike picha yangu alafu picha huu ndio ionekane.
Hapana.
Haiwezi.
Tunaandikisha mtu moja mara moja.
Okay.
Tukimaliza tunasema okay, inaenda.
Okay.
Sasa hakuna vile moja inaingiliana na nyingine.
Oh. Hapa sisi hatuna mengi. We are very busy.
Tutakuja wakati wa lunch.
No.
Tutasaidiana. Sasa tuko busy.
Tuko busy. Tuko busy. Siku moja. Tutakuja. No worry.
Watu tuko na makazi.
Si nyinyi mnajenga nje. Wacha sisi tujenga manyumba.
Na sisi tukijenga maboma.
Yeah. Tutarudi tu hamna shida. Muta iko.
Wamejitokeza.
Hakuna mtu alikuwa hapa.
Tena leo wamejaa.
Hai.
Tujaribu.
Wacha tuongoje tuone.
IPC. Harakisha kidogo bwana, sisi tuko na haraka.
Yeah. Kasa mkono, just kasa mkono. Serikali ningefanya umechua kitu ingefanya. Ingetupa hata holiday ya mwaka mzima. Tukuweze kucha kufoti.
Sasa holiday.